Happy holidays, Team Tolerator. I really hope that whatever you are doing this holiday season, it brings you joy and rest and gets us ready for whatever we are going to be facing in 2025. You will be happy to know that that's when we will start releasing new episodes of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before again. While we are on our holiday break, you can enjoy our Still Comfy episodes with Julia Washington from Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous that will be posted on our feed, as well as some Patreon content that I am going to release to the free feed that was previously only available to our Patreon members. If you are really missing new content, please go check out the Patreon. There are so many Team Tolerator check ins and misogyny meltdowns waiting for you. And I will still be making short content on our socials. So make sure that you are following us on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod and TikTok at Natalie K124. All of that will be in the show notes. I will see you in the new year. Happy holidays again, and see you soon. Hey, Tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, the show where my guest and I chat about how misogyny is ever present in everything that we watch and happens to be a huge moneymaker. I'm happy today because I get to spend time with Annie Sieg for like an entire hour. This never happens for us. You remember her from our Bodies as Art episode and our first Fireside Live. Annie, thank you so much for being here to talk about our one true love, reality television.
I am thrilled to be here to talk about reality TV. It is my deepest and most disturbing obsession. And I can't wait to get into it.
My mother immediately became disappointed in me, not because of reality TV, but because I told her I was still watching Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard pill.
It's because I just finished This Is Us and I mentioned it. And she's like, I stopped watching This Is Us on like episode 6. And I was like, fair. I'm still watching Grey's Anatomy.
I tried to get into This Is Us because as a kid, Milo Ventimiglia, or however you pronounce his last name, on Gilmore Girls, lit my fire, baby. That was a developmental like crush timeline. And so I tried to get into This Is Us just for the Milo of it all. It's not my flavor. But Grey's Anatomy, I didn't stick it out for Grey's, but there was a time in my life where several seasons of Grey's Anatomy, they were there for me in the hard times.
At this time, I think Shonda's just writing episodes for me. I don't talk to anyone else, and they're like, I'm still watching Grey's too. Good for you for like being loyal. It's just me.
It's just you and Shonda just having your private time.
Right. It's just me and Shonda. And then months later, my sister will just binge them all. But I also keep her up to date on every episode. I'm like, this is what will piss you off about Owen this season. DeLuca dead.
I mean, now you're making me feel like I need to go back to that well again. Don't do this to me, Natalie. We're here for reality TV. Don't put me back on another scripted drama.
I ask myself once a week if I should be rewatching Glee.
I don't think you should.
No one thinks I should, but every once in a while it comes up and I'm like, should I be rewatching Glee?
Follow your heart. I read something early on in the pandemic because everyone immediately flocked to like whatever their comfort TV was, and it was all like rewatching, and then everyone got lost in these weird cycles of having to consume the same things over and over again. And I read something about how it was like an anxiety response where the world is like so scary and uncertain now that it's comforting for us to just consume things that we already know exactly what's going to happen. Yes. We can like recite the lines along with it. It's weird.
Which is why I think I'm going to bring it back to reality TV. Early in the pandemic, I got really invested in watching every season of Survivor. And then 6 seasons in, I realized that it's always a different island, but we're always playing the same games in the same order. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, there are a few staples of reality TV that I just somehow like. Once we get talking, you will probably discover that I have seen a truly disturbing amount of reality TV, and yet a couple of the like core fundamentals just missed me. Survivor is one that I don't think I've even ever seen an episode of. Big Brother is another one where I'm like, who's she? I don't know her. I don't know. But I hear good things. I think if anything, I've steered away at this point because I'm like, I can't take that on. There's too much history there.
So Big Brother does this thing that I would like the Bachelor franchise to implement, and I think it would really like re-up my interest in Bachelor Nation. And Big Brother does something called Big Brother After Dark, where you can watch a live stream of them when all of the producers have gone home. And I'm like, that's what I want to see. I want to see what they really talk about when we're not. I want to watch them sit awkwardly in a room trying to share the same magazine.
See, The Bachelor is, I'm glad we're diving into that one right away because I have a lot of feelings about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and Bachelor in Paradise and Bachelor Pad and all the various Bachelor accoutrements. But in my brain, Bachelor is like kind of segmented away from a lot of the other reality shows in that a lot of reality shows are about like really digging in and exposing like the true gnarliness of humanity.
Yeah.
And Bachelor and Bachelorette are this like very controlled, different thing where it's like they're trying to kind of hide how gross people are and make it a love story, but then they also know that we want the trash.
Yeah.
So then they try and fabricate a like a controlled burn of the trash. So they just it's a weird one. It feels more to me like a scripted drama than a reality show.
Oh yeah. They manipulate us from the get-go. I remember because I've been watching, well, I recently broke up with the Bachelor franchise, but I watched from the beginning, from that ugly guy Bob G something,
from Ugly Bob,
from Ugly Bob, where it was just like a guy with a goofy ass nose and chubby cheeks and like bad hair, and he's like, I'm the Bachelor. And there was Chris Harrison and that guy who may have also lost a job at American Idol. Like there were two hosts.
The Bachelor at this point, it's probably tacky to plug a podcast on another podcast.
No, that's what we do.
The only way that I still am so plugged into The Bachelor and The Bachelorette at this point is through the podcast Game of Roses, which they basically, I'm obsessed with it. They're these hosts that like analyze The Bachelor and The Bachelorette as if it is like a professional sport, and they have like point assignments for different things. They talk about different approaches, and they rank hujus, which is the hug jump. They talk about like the dismount, the cling, like they like deep analyze what's going on. And then they also do weekly updates on like what the various people in that world are doing on their social media after they leave the game and all of the kind of drama. And I love hearing that kind of stuff. But when I go to watch the actual episodes, they're really boring.
They're really boring. That's why I've stopped watching. I remember the golden days of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette when it was the trashiest show on TV. And we weren't owned by the mouse in the house, because I hate Disney now.
Yeah.
So we weren't owned by Disney, so we could do like scandalous, like blur out a nip slip or like get really drunk and belligerent. I believe that someone did fall in a bush at some point. One chick was communing with aliens one season. Like it was just unhinged. And you were like, yes. And so I think Disney owning ABC made them cool their shit down. But I also think that a scripted show Unreal, where they where they took like a bunch of autobiographies from Bachelor contestants, and also someone who worked for the Bachelor franchise worked on that show for Lifetime. When they started spilling secrets like, we hire therapists and then we used your trauma against you during interviews, so you cried, then ABC was like, all right, well, they're catching on. And we're going to get sued. So,
well, the other part of the problem is that like the fundamental premise of the show doesn't hold up, because the entire thing of like, it's about love and true love and finding your person. well, first of all, it's obviously not, because the producers are doing everything they can to make chaos. So like, that's not them trying to help you. And then if you look at the track record, there's been 8 zillion seasons of this show, and like 3 people from it are still married, and they're probably married mostly for financial reasons.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, no shame in that game, do you, hun? But it's for them to still be clinging. Like, now we're reaching this weird point where people are familiar enough with the strategy of the game and the different kind of archetypes that you can fit into and all of that, that people are going into it with like game plans in mind and strategy in mind. And then when that comes out, then there's this response of, you're here for the wrong reasons. But like, it very clearly, those are the reasons everyone is there for.
Yeah.
So it's really losing its grasp on things.
Well, and then this is also why I stopped watching The Bachelor, Bachelorette, because they lie to me all the time. And then I'll listen to these people who I have been manipulated into not trusting and hating and being like, what a terrible person. And they'll go on someone else's podcast and you hear them start to dismantle, like, this is the exact moment that the producers decided I would be the villain. And from that point on, anything and everything I did was misconstrued by not only the showrunner, but by the house as well. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
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 Well, and like, they very clearly are carving out how they want things to go. And then sometimes they literally can't win it. Like Claire Crowley's season, she like 5 seconds into it was like, that one, I picked that one. And they were like, can't do that. And she was like, nah, I did.
Yeah,
like,
I did.
You know,
I stalked him on Instagram. I made up a story in my mind about him, and I've decided that he's the one that I will wed. And then that was the greatest moment of Bachelor history. For one thing, like Claire Crawley is our famously oldest Bachelorette. She was 38 by the time she got her own season.
Ancient. So old.
Ancient. She had been on countless seasons of Bachelor in Paradise, if not all of them. Probably Bachelor Pad.
I think she did Bachelor Winter Games.
She also did. Well, she almost married a guy off of the Winter Games. That was when they took. That's when they took all of the Bachelor franchise from all around the world and held an Olympic event.
Yeah, it was strange. That was a strange one.
And you were like, okay.
Sure. They
So
made them do like ice dancing. It was so random.
Yeah, she was the runner-up of her Bachelor season, but for whatever reason, they never hired her as the Bachelorette. They just kept her around as this unhinged, bitter lady who was like, I can't believe that I haven't found love. And it's like, well, have you ever seen how they produced you and tried to counteract that? Like,
I also feel like she got kind of like the Jennifer Aniston treatment, where like America decided back when the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, Jennifer Aniston thing happened, America just like collectively decided that we felt like love and pity for Jennifer Aniston, and that she was just like hopeless and could never find a man, which is insane because she's like stunningly gorgeous and successful. And again, had just been with Brad Pitt, like leave the girl alone. But then anything that fits into that narrative becomes like sensationalized. It's like, oh, you know, she broke up with so-and-so. Jen is lost again. She just can't do it. And it's like, okay, calm down. And I feel like Claire was kind of that way.
Help out Jen.
Yeah. And with Claire, it was like, oh, Claire's heartbroken again. She just has the worst luck in love. And it was like, well, is that what's happening? Or is this just a weird narrative you're building?
Right. Or does she only date within this incestual ABC dating service?
Well, and psychologically, to be the type of person that not only gets involved in a reality TV show like on that level, but then chooses to return to that format over and over again, despite seeing how wild it is. Like there's something there psychologically that's probably not great.
I remember texting my friend that of course this would happen on Claire's season. Claire gets to be the Bachelorette, and I truly believe it's because everyone else told them no. Like they heard enough no's that they were like, Claire will do it.
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that time-wise, that was right after they'd had like a massive scandal. I think that was right after the season where they had the first Black Bachelor, and then the winner. There's a very loud garbage truck right outside my window right now. I'm very sorry.
That's okay. I'll cut it out in post, or the listeners can listen to how we live.
The sweet sounds of garbage alley.
One time I was recording and they decided to power wash with no warning. And I was like, are you kidding me? They're just spraying this window. Claire was right before Matt James, who is the first Black Bachelor. She might.
I could totally be wrong. I had thought that she was after Matt James and it was them trying to like placate America a little bit, being like, look, we'll give you an old one. You like old ladies, but I could totally be wrong.
I think she was right before Matt. Because so it went Rachel was a while ago, but when it comes to people of color, it was Rachel and then Tayshia. I think Tayshia was before Matt. And
Tayshia took over for Claire.
Right.
That would mean that Claire would have to be before Matt too, if Tayshia was before Matt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it went Rachel, Tayshia, Matt, I think, if I'm remembering things correctly. Because Matt was also at the tail end of COVID. By the time Matt was done, and then they had Michelle, I think
aren't we right now at the tail end of COVID? Fingers crossed. When is the end of COVID?
So of course Claire gets the COVID season where they have to stay in a La Quinta and just be sequestered into their rooms until Chris Harrison knocks on your door and is like, you get to come out now for champagne.
The fact that the show continued to forge ahead through that is wild. I mean, I understand there's a lot of money wrapped up in all of that and people were still desperate for entertainment, but like part of the beauty of all of these shows, and this will probably accidentally be my transition to my next reality topic, which is the Real Housewives. But in any of these categories, like part of what you're looking for is this escapist quality of like the Housewives, the Kardashians, the Bachelor. They're people wearing glamorous outfits and taking private jets and going on like unimaginably fancy dates, and you get to be like a little voyeur into that process. And so to watch a bunch of like stressed out people in a La Quinta crying was like, this is not what I ordered.
Not it.
No, thank you. You can keep that.
This is not it. Well, so let's go into the Real Housewives, because I think the Real Housewives is a perfect example of how reality TV chooses to depict women.
I think so. I'm a big defender of the Real Housewives.
I love them.
Not all of them, because like obviously some of those women are truly monsters. Most of those women are truly monsters. But I have a theory that part of the reason that we are finally today starting to see movies and TV shows that focus around women who are older, because we're seeing actresses like Jessica Lange or what's her name, who's on Hacks, the lead in Jean Smart. All of these women who are like older women, tremendously talented, have been around forever, are finally getting to not just be like backup roles but primary characters. I think it's because Real Housewives has proven that people are interested in a story based around an unhinged older women, that they still have drama we're interested in. They still have stories that are super worth telling. They are compelling characters, and that the public will watch things that are about them.
Right. Because we love to watch an old lady flip a table.
Hell yeah. That's cool as hell.
That's cool as hell. Everyone wished that their grandma or great aunt would honestly flip the Christmas table at any moment.
Yeah. And there's something so satisfying in like, because they are these extremely wealthy, privileged people who just live these bizarre, charmed lives. Not only do you get to witness the charmed lives, but the things that they get upset about are so stupid. I mean, sometimes something valid happens. Sometimes someone's house gets broken into, or someone gets really sick, or whatever it is. But for the most part, it is these massive arguments about like, you didn't send me a thank you note when I gave you a jar of my husband's homemade pasta sauce, and now I hate you.
I hate you. I'm gonna throw this pasta sauce at you during your son's wedding.
And I'm not saying I've never been very emotional over a stupid topic before. It's basically my go-to vibe. But it's just when you have that much in your life, when you're that rich and your life is that like glamorous, to be distraught over something so stupid, it's entertaining.
So my favorite trope, or my favorite thing to kind of go into is how we build up these people to be the exact circus that we want them to be until we get tired of it. And then we're like, we hate you and you don't deserve money anymore. So the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, which was by far one of my favorites, segued into my favorite reality TV show, Vanderpump Rules.
I was just gonna say, you're setting up the exact conversation of Vanderpump Rules. We've got to talk about Jax and Stassi.
We have to talk about all of them. So Vanderpump Rules is about Lisa Vanderpump's restaurant, Pump.
And excuse me, ma'am, it's about Sir's sexy restaurant. Pump is sometimes featured, but get it straight.
Correct. Sir. And the wait staff. And the wait staff, when Vanderpump Rules started out, is all of these 20 to 23-year-olds, and then maybe Jax is 28.
I have bad news for you. Jax, I think, was fully in his 30s when the show started. I think he was at least 30 years old, which is wild. He's acting 21 years old.
They are the bartenders and wait staff of Sir, and they're all in their lower 20s unless you're Jax. And they're unhinged and they're young and they want to be actors and actresses. So they're constantly like blowing off shifts or whatever to do their own thing. And then Bravo was like, this is a group of people the world should be exposed to. And I was in. I love them. But then 10 years into me watching Vanderpump Rules and watching these very vapid, idiotic people become grown-ups, I started to root for them because I was like, look at them. Stassi's getting her shit together. Beau's nice.
I'm suspicious. I'm highly suspicious of Beau, but I understand others like him.
I like Beau. But anyways, they were starting to get their shit together. They were still a hot mess because you have to be. That's what your career is based off of. But they were like, the heinous had worn off of them. But could we be happy about that? No. America decided to dig into their past of being a 22-year-old idiot.
No. I gotta defend on this one. Don't get me wrong. I am distraught that the OGs got booted because it was good TV. However, a lot of the past was not that far back.
Well, that's true.
A lot of the stuff that had happened was like pretty active and recent and pretty
was it recent? Because I went back and watched all of the first seasons thinking that that's when it happened. I wanted to see it happen and it never aired.
No, it didn't air. So the main things, so where to begin in all of this? I have so many thoughts and feelings about Vanderpump Rules. First of all, before I even dive into that, I Googled it to be sure. And in season 1, according to Google, Jax was 33 when the show started. So
Jax was my age now.
Yeah, when the show started. So no excuse. Not that there is an excuse for his behavior, but like, wowzers. So, the challenge is that the reason we loved Vanderpump Rules is because these people are human garbage. And I know you're saying like they were getting it together. They weren't. Some of them were getting it together, but like Jax legitimately had an affair on like a recording with a woman while she was taking care of an old woman in hospice. Like, and then they played the recording of it at a party where his fiance could hear it. Like, they were not. No, nothing was okay.
They were garbage people. I'd like to retract my statement. I think COVID gave me too much faith in people.
COVID gave you too much faith. That's only what happened to you. Everyone else lost faith. But the problem is that we celebrated them and we loved watching the show because of how garbage they were. The truth of the matter is that if there'd been a show about Stassi being happy with Beau and Jax suddenly behaving himself and everyone getting along, we would not like that show.
No, we wouldn't.
But when you cross a certain threshold of garbageness, it becomes an issue. So like when it was just that Jax was constantly cheating on everyone and lying about it and giving everyone numerous venereal diseases, that was gross, but we could kind of go, it's what you get for hooking up with Jax, you know, it's a bummer, but it is what it is. Versus the main things that got them booted off the show. First of all, the Faith drama, if I'm remembering correctly, happened around the time of the whole audio thing. Did you watch that season? It was like 6 or somewhere in there.
I've watched all of the seasons. I didn't think Faith was on the show for more than seasons 1 and 2, and that's why my timeline is confused.
You're mixing Faith up with another person. So there's another woman of color who was on the show in the early seasons. That's not Faith. I can't remember her name now, but that's not Faith.
Oh, see, you're educating me at this point. I'm going to have to like journal and reflect. And yeah. I'm pretty positive. I'll have to, I mean, I'm always willing to go back to the source material, but I'm pretty positive. I can't place her name right now, but I think there was a woman who, she was like a singer and she talked to Sheena. They went to like a juice bar at some point. Yeah.
She was briefly featured and that was not Faith, unless I'm wrong. I think Faith periodically kind of popped up as like a background player, but the way that she really became a main character on the show was that she hooked up with Jax while he was with Brittany in this very scandalous way and released the audio, which by the way is definitely illegal. Secretly recording the sound of someone having sex with you without telling them and then releasing that audio to be played
on Bravo.
Yeah. I mean, technically they didn't play the audio because then Bravo would get sued, but it was clear what was happening and they explained it. In response to all of this drama, around this same time when everyone's pretty validly mad at Faith, Stassi and the other girls think that the cool, correct response is they see some kind of information about a woman that stole something who is a completely different, unrelated woman of color who does not even particularly look like Faith.
May not even live in California. Like,
yeah. And they call the cops and tell them that Faith did it. So this is problematic because especially in the wake of what we know about how the police tend to treat people of color, doing like a fun prank of calling the cops on a Black woman is like, that's different than just like being a guy who is cheaty in his relationships.
I am flabbergasted right now. I am so glad that you so I mess timelines up in my head all the time. So I automatically assumed that this happened when Stassi was 20. And I was like, oh God, Stassi, you were on TV. But no,
I'm pretty sure this was in the later years. And again, let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was in the later years. And then the other thing is Stassi is constantly saying like really messed up white supremacist commentary and like
all the time
silly giggles about Nazi fashion and that she was so weird about the Oscars so white thing. And
see, I don't pay attention to any of their social medias. I just want to watch them almost lose their jobs at SUR and then leave them.
Well, and I was mad about it because it is kind of that thing of like, I want you to be a garbage person, but like, can you just control the ways in which you're garbage so I can continue enjoying you?
Isn't that our whole, like, that is our entire, like, ownership and entitlement when it comes to reality TV. It's like, you get to be trash, but you get to be trash in the way that I am comfortable only, because now I am complacent in the fact that you are a trash person who is making a lot of money and I enjoy Vanderpump Rules.
Well, and it's like, from the sounds of it, from all the rumblings, it sounds like a lot of the various like Real Housewives clusters have had a lot of issues of like cast members saying really racist things that don't make it into the final cut because the editors are like protecting them and all of this. So sort of like, it's not even a question of if you need to be a quote good person or not to be on the show. It's a matter of if the public finds out and how mad they choose to get over the particular way that you were bad. It's a hard line to draw.
Well, so that's interesting too, because okay, so we get to be the body of people who are mad, right? And sometimes we overlook what we're mad about in order for Vanderpump Rules to stay Vanderpump Rules. However, if this happened on The Bachelor, when Rachel Lindsay came out about all of the bullshit that she has to go through as being the Bachelorette and as being the first Black Bachelorette, then this is why I'm so fucking done with Bachelor Nation too, because they're like, learn your place, be quiet, you got roses. I don't understand why you're mad.
Well, and I think a lot about how growing up, I wasn't like obsessed with becoming famous or anything like that. But I think everyone looks at it as like being famous, being wealthy, being a celebrity, being in the public eye is like, you know, it's a status thing. That's cool that you have achieved that you get that opportunity, whatever it is. And these days, like, if I have a post that does well on TikTok, I'm like, oh no, people are going to have so many mean things to say. And it'll be literally like I did like a drawing of like a duck. And I'm like, people are going to hate ducks now. They're going to tell me about how I like betrayed the world of ducks with my bad duck rendering. Like, whatever you do, people are going to come in and be so nasty. And when you take that to the level of being on a major network show, I can't imagine the kinds of things that these people have to get used to hearing. And not only does that have to have a really damaging effect on their psyche, but I think it also probably makes it hard for them to understand where some of these lines are. Because like the reason that I know some of the stuff about what Stassi would say in her bad behavior is there was like a brief window of time where I feel like I had listened to every podcast that existed and I needed entertainment. And I was like, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to listen to some of Stassi's podcasts, which, like, oh my God, the darkness, like truly, it was not a good podcast.
No.
But it was interesting to listen to, like, what does this woman talk about when she doesn't have a producer kind of controlling where she's at and what she's doing. I feel like I've lost my train of thought. I don't know. It's a whole
my whole brain is caving in because I'm like, oh my gosh, way to go. You decided to not be manipulated by ABC anymore, but Bravo was like, we still got you right in the palm of our hands, right? And I was like, yeah, you do.
Yeah. It's
people that so another family that I love to be obsessed with, that we built up all of these women just to literally push them off a cliff whenever it's convenient for us, are the Kardashians. And I was like, here's the thing. We made the Kardashians. Like, we are responsible for this. Like,
so one of my darkest truths is that I am like one of the world's largest Kardashian apologists. I'm not insane. I understand that they really mess up a lot of times in a lot of ways and that they're doing a lot of things wrong. But I've been like a ride or die Kardashian fan for a very long time. Fan is probably the wrong word, but I find them fascinating. And like, there's a rule in my family that my mom and I like can't talk about the Kardashians with each other because we make each other furious. She's like an old school bra burning feminist. And she's like, she just got famous for getting peed on. And then I'll be like, or is she a woman that's harnessing the fact that society only values her for her sexuality and shit? Like, it goes from 0 to 60 within seconds. Like, we cannot talk about them.
That's who I am. I'm like, okay, so we want to be obsessed with the fact that Kim Kardashian, Pamela Anderson, and anyone else who's had a sex tape leaked gets that sex tape leaked. And we want to watch it and we want to talk about it and we want to blow up our MySpace accounts with it, because I think that's what was around when the Kim K one and Randy, was that his name?
Ray J?
Randy. When Ray J, when that all came out, like, we're all talking about it. But so we're all talking about it. However, then they start getting sponsorships because now everyone knows who Kim K is. Now, Pam Anderson went away. I don't know what happened to her after her Tommy Lee sex tape. Maybe it was because it was her husband. No one actually gave that many fucks about it.
People gave many fucks.
Maybe I was too young to remember. I don't know. I have to watch the Hulu show about it, is what needs to happen.
I am making one of those like stands that will affect nobody and is like a weird, stupid, tiny, meaningless protest against that. But I still am, because Pam was very vocal when that show was coming out that she had not agreed for them to use her likeness. She did not want them to talk about it. She found that it was like re-traumatizing that they were going to make a show about this really vulnerable, upsetting thing that happened to her, and that she wasn't even consulting on it. And she now, in the aftermath, because that show did really well, she's doing like her own like docuseries or something where she's talking about it. But she was like, I don't condone this. I don't want this to happen. I don't want the public dredging all of this old trauma up again. And they just did it anyway. So
I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, maybe I won't watch it. I'll just
this
stand in solid.
I'm too tuned into pop culture. It's not right. There's no reason I should know these many things.
So the whole thing with the Kardashians for me is I am also a Kardashian apologist. And that's kind of also, and I think that's what translated into me signing on with being a Vanderpump Rules apologist, because I was like, here, so we build these people up to be garbage and then we're mad at them when they're garbage. However, you gave me clarity of it. It's like, you can't just keep escalating your garbage. Kim K says a lot of stupid shit, and she says a lot of stupid shit out of privilege, out of the fact that like no one probably has sat down with her to be like, hey, we need to start like reshaping what your PR and image to the world is. You're getting too damn grown to be doing this. No, Hulu, all of the rest of them just keep throwing like gasoline on her, being like, burn brighter, dumpster fire, burn. And then we're mad.
I also think there's an issue of like, everyone loves hating them. And I get it. I watch reality TV. I understand a love-hate situation. But I feel like when you really look at what's happening in her life currently, because Kim has gone through some rough phases. And as you said, even in very recent history, has said some stupid things. But she's someone who has enormous wealth and power and visibility. And she's going to law school and is actively trying to get people who were falsely convicted off of death row. Like, compared to the average celebrity, that is using her power for a really good cause. And that doesn't mean that she has carte blanche to do whatever else she wants. But I just look at, for example, the stuff with like her and Kanye. And she said something on a recent episode of the show where she was getting frustrated, and she was like, he's a rapper, so what he's done, everyone sees as art. So when he talks trash about me and says that I'm a horrible mother and spills our personal secrets to the world, everyone goes like, oh, it's art, and they like clap for him and cheer him on. But when I try and tell my side of the story about anything, they go, she's manipulating him, she's putting his mental illness on her reality TV show for views. And this is my platform, this is what I do, but I'm never allowed to tell my side of the story without becoming more of a bad guy. That doesn't seem fair. No. And I think people don't view what she does as having value or having worth or being art. And I'm not claiming that it's art, but she has built herself from a like F-list celebrity to one of the most famous people in the universe. And she still has this kind of golden shackles of like, people will never forgive her for the fact that she is a sexual woman. Like the fact that that's part of it, she never is going to get away with.
So I think we really do need to talk about like, what does reality TV and what it does to female contestants. My God, now I'm losing my ability to speak. And how it portrays interpersonal relationships. What does that say about our society? I had a former friend, a former man that I've tolerated before, tell me, and it was like the darkest thing I've ever heard anyone say. He was way into like British tabloids, and for whatever reason, British tabloids know everything 5 years before we know anything. So he was saying something, and I was like, I just don't understand why we're always nitpicking these people who are just like literally in movies that we pay $13 to go see. And he's like, well, here's the thing. We do own them and we build them up so we can push them down whenever it's going to make us feel good. And I was like, but why are we on board? Like, that makes me dark. An icky person.
Yeah, that is dark. And I do think that there's just so much joy in outrage these days. People just like are psyched to be outraged. And I'm not trying to go all like, oh, cancel culture. Cause like, I think that people should be held accountable for their bad behavior. But I do think there is a degree of, you take a person who already is displaying bad decision-making, bad behavior, you give them a massive platform, you hand them a huge microphone and a check for $1 zillion, and then you're surprised when they act worse. Like, of course they do. I was thinking about this kind of general subject because I've been binging through old episodes of The Jersey Shore, one of my classics. And I was thinking about how there's this weird circular kind of snake eating its own tail situation with reality TV and social norms, where the idea is supposed to be that reality TV is reflecting what society actually looks like. but then society is watching reality TV and we're each taking our cues of what's normal and what's acceptable from what they're showing us.
Right.
So like the reason Jersey Shore was making me think about it is that at the time that I was watching that, to me, the way that those people were interacting, what they were saying to each other, what their thoughts and opinions were about things were like, yeah, that's what people think. Like as like a teenager watching that show, I was, or early 20s or whenever it was, I was like, oh yeah, so that they're displaying what the general social beliefs are. And then watching it now, a lot of the things, like at one point they're in the middle of an argument. One of them's mad at Angelina because they're always mad at Angelina. And they were like, she's dumb and she needs to get on a treadmill. She's so fat, which there's a lot wrong with that. But one of the things that's wrong with that is Angelina weighed like 10 pounds. She was so small. And I don't remember ever mentally flagging as someone watching that show that that was an insane thing for them to be saying to her, that it did not apply to her body. And that even if it had, that was an awful thing for them to be saying. And it didn't become like a major plot at all in the episode. They're just like, yeah, she is fat, ha, and then like move on with it. And I was like, the fact that as a young viewer, I was consuming the information that isn't something someone had written to make a point to me. This was not storytelling. This was what people really think and say to each other and how it's acceptable to act. That's an upsetting thing to be fed into your squishy young brain, you know?
Yeah. And then which I do have opinions on cancel culture because I'm all for, like you, accountability, but I also need to lend towards empathy and be like, you are allowed to work yourself out of cancel culture. And there will be varying degrees on how that happens depending on your social crime. But I think what ends up happening with the Kardashians, with the Vanderpump Rules stuff or whatever, is I sit there and I go, I'm fucked if someone reads my text messages from when I was 18. Like, I am just fucked.
Yep. And part of what's especially dark about that is we live in a world where, to an eternally increasing degree, all of us are going to forever have a permanent record. They're like, when people reached adulthood in our youth, they could have secrets that stayed very secret that they just died with.
Yeah.
But now, you know, I was talking about this with a friend of mine the other day where they just had a baby about a year ago, and they were arguing with their parents all the time because their parents always wanted to post pictures of the baby on Instagram. And this couple was like, we're not doing that yet. The parents were like, we don't understand, we want to show off our grandbaby. And they were like, she can't consent to that being out there. And not only is that an issue of whatever pictures we put out are pictures that are available to the entire world for the rest of her life, but also we live in a world where what your face looks like, your like bio data for like security and identification reasons is like there's just, it's become this like crazy web of permanent traces that we're leaving behind, and you can't outrun your mistakes. My main issue with cancel culture though is not that we have to learn how to forgive each other, which we do. It's the fact that most of the people complaining the loudest about being canceled aren't fucking canceled. Chrissy Teigen has millions of followers on Instagram. I used to be a big Chrissy Teigen fan. I still follow her. I'm not fully canceling her,
right?
But I found it really frustrating that she would not stop complaining about how hard it was that she'd been canceled while continuing to have buttloads of money and buttloads of access to whatever she wanted and a ton of fans and people telling her how pretty and smart and funny she was. Stassi just released her second book. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's about how hard it is that she's been canceled. It's a New York Times bestseller. If people are buying your book and they're writing reviews about you and they're going to your book signings and you're selling, you know, Instagram ads for whatever dumb stuff for a bunch of money, in what world are you canceled?
Stassi bought herself onto the New York Best Times list.
I did hear that.
And now I'm like, now I'm going to check every time someone's like, I made it onto the New York Best Sellers list. I'm going to check and be like, do you have that sword? It's like a dagger.
Wait, is there a marker on it that says
there's
that?
A marker? So if you look at the New York bestsellers list, if there's a book title and then there's this like little like medieval looking dagger next to it, that means that someone bought that book in bulk to distribute privately or whatever, and that inflated the numbers.
Interesting. Good to know.
Interesting.
Good to know. I had heard that she messed her numbers up, and not messed them up, but that she bought her way onto the list. And I genuinely am such like a dinky small scale thinker that I was just picturing Stassi like running around to a Barnes and Noble like 20 copies at a time, as if that's how you make that big of a difference.
I need you to know that that's also how I think things are. I'm like, how silly that you would go to that many Targets and buy out the Target's entire 3-book supply of your book, because no one's keeping anything in stock.
Especially not books.
Right. But yeah. And I think reality TV really does highlight for me, like, just literally the lack of empathy and like deep rooted conscientious awareness we exhibit in our relationships. I think like one thing I ended up saying on this podcast is the thing that frustrates me the most about relationships with other people is that I have to constantly remind myself that I have absolutely nothing to do with my relationship to that person, because in their head, they get to perceive anything and everything that I do and then assign value that I hold in their life. And I can kind of change my behavior to affect or manipulate that. But at the end of the day, it really, and believe me, I've read former text messages from men recently that I slept with, and I was like, fuck, it was written all over the walls that you didn't give a shit about me. And I'm still like, if I text him one more time, blah, 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 if I tell him this about myself or my bras or my boobs or whatever, like I had to ask my friend, I was like, why am I constantly, and I'm just going to use his moniker since this is an ever present person on the podcast. I'm like, why am I always telling Friendly or Friend Zoned when I'm going bra shopping or what bra I'm wearing? Why? Why is that just something I'm giving him a daily update on?
Yeah, it's just that idea of like, I understand the impulse. I understand the impulse to be like, I just want to make sure you're thinking about me. I'm thinking about you all the time. I want to make sure you're thinking about me. I want to make sure those thoughts are connected to boobs. I want to plant that seed. But the reality of the matter is that, like, if I have learned anything over my many horrible dating experiences, they're good now. I'm in a good relationship now, but like, boy, the times have been dark before. It's that if a guy likes you, he's gonna make that really clear. I spent so much of my life trying to analyze like the secret meanings of text messages and trying to be like, oh, you know, am I texting too much or too little? Does he want to hang out? Blah, blah, blah. And like, one of the reasons I am in a happy relationship right now is when I started dating my current boo, like I was at the time seeing 2 other guys, because I'm, I'm like that. I was seeing 2 other guys, and both of them, it was like that, where it was like, I'd see them like every couple of weeks, and it would be like, oh, I'm really busy, but if you want to come over, that's fine. And like, that's the invite or whatever. Like, and I met my boyfriend, and he was literally like, can we hang out again tomorrow? I was like, I mean, sure. I mean, yeah, we can hang out tomorrow. And he was like, let's hang out as much as possible all the time. And like, you have to be careful too with like love bombing, and there are bad versions of that. But the truth of the matter is, if someone's excited about you and they like you, they're gonna make that clear, because they're also gonna want you to be thinking about them, and they're also gonna want to know what you're doing. And like, the decoding is most of the time pretty unnecessary.
And then, so that reminds me of my favorite trope on Married at First Sight and Love is Blind. And it's the instant, oh, I fucked up and now I'm in a committed relationship with you moment.
So scared.
So scared. I love that on every episode of At Married, or every season of At Married on First Sight, those experts know this man really thinks he's into this, but he's not. And we're going to pair him up with probably the nicest lady. Like, it is usually someone who does not deserve this. And they get married. Maybe they have sex that night. Maybe they make out a little bit. Maybe they literally just change into pajamas and go to bed. and they wake up that next day and you can read it from his head to his toes. I was like, this fucker didn't really think that Lifetime was going to make them get married.
You know, something that's interesting to retrace to our first point of The Bachelor, Bachelorette, and that podcast that I listened to. One of the things I learned from that podcast, because they analyze all of the like statistics and analytics or whatever, that I think about sometimes is if it's a bachelorette, if the woman is doing the choosing, the person she gives the first impression rose to, the person who on the first night she sees and she's like, there's a spark there, there's something there. The likelihood that that person makes it really far in the competition or even potentially wins is actually really significant. There's a very high likelihood that they'll at least make it to like the top 4 or whatever. For the guy, it makes almost no difference. Who he picks in first impression rose is almost always just who he thinks is physically attractive. And then it's kind of like, I guess now I'll get to know you guys. Like there's statistically, it really, whoever he picks on night 1 reflects almost nothing about who's going to make it to the end.
So when I'm the bachelorette, the thing that I'm the most concerned about is who will be my safety net now because Chris Harrison is canceled and gone.
Well, they've got they've got a new guy, something Palmer.
Yeah, Jesse Palmer.
Yeah.
He has a very square head. He and the first bachelor that he worked with, I was like, they are the same person.
Yeah.
How do you even know who you're dating?
They just
at this
pushed
point?
them both out of the same mold. They just made 2. Yeah.
So early on in the Bachelor and Bachelorette franchise, you used to get to watch them ponder over who they were going to give the rose to. And there was a candle shrine with everyone's headshot and name on a candle. And I, as a viewer of the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise, am a lot like the Bachelor, whereas I don't know anyone's name until around episode 6.
In my real life, I can't keep track of people's names. When I first meet people, for the first dozen times I see them, I will avoid using their name because I'm so sure that if I remember it at all, that I'm remembering it wrong.
Right.
I don't know how they keep, and now it's it used to be that they would have I think maybe 20 contestants, and now it's 30, 40. The number of people that they haul into that mansion is insane.
Well, and now I've learned that the reason why they twirl the rose while they're pretending to ponder who's getting the next one is because the names are written on the rose.
They write it in the petals somewhere.
They hide the names in the roses.
Interesting.
Because one time the Bachelor gave the rose to the wrong woman. He said a name, and a lady he did not want to have a connection with stepped up, and then he had to immediately panic, look at Chris and wave a producer over, and they had a huddle right in front of all of these insecure women who were just waiting to be picked. And then he got to give out an extra rose to the woman he actually meant to give that rose to.
I know that if I was a contestant on The Bachelor, I would be that person that cries in every episode. Even if I had no romantic interest in The Bachelor and I got there and was like, oh, there's no vibe there, so I'll just enjoy my 15 minutes of fame and hope to get some Instagram ads out of this, I would cry probably multiple times an episode. The idea of standing on those weird tiny bleachers they have and watching some square-headed white man tell me whether or not I was worthy of his affection. I feel like I'm having heart palpitations. I can't. That's so weird and uncomfortable.
Well, and the fact of the thing is now the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise, Love is Blind, The Ultimatum, all of them reinforce the tragedy of online dating that I keep falling into, which is you can always shop around.
Yeah.
Did I irritate you about the type of breed of dog I like? Fucking go swipe and find someone new who's going to be quieter, more palpable, likes the same video game format that you like, any and everything. You just have it right there at your fingertips.
Well, I think a lot of dating shows fundamentally tie back to the idea that what you're looking for in a partner is someone who's the same as you. Even just there, you were saying, do I not like the same video games? Do I not like the same dogs? A lot of people, when they're looking for a partner, they're looking for someone that's as close to a mirror replica of them as possible. And I find that baffling because something I know is that I'm annoying. I am a hard person to date. Don't get me wrong, I'm great, hooray, whatever, go me. But I don't want to date me. I want to date someone who balances me out, someone who like when I'm acting like a neurotic weirdo is going to stay calm, someone who, you know, we complement each other, we fill in some of those blanks. And yet a lot of these shows circle around that, like, you know, night one of The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, it's all like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what my childhood was like. That's what I love to do in my free time. Same thing on like The Ultimatum, on that one couple that like clicked right away on Ultimatum. They kept being like, it's so weird. Literally every single thing is the same about us. And I was like, okay, so don't date them because that sounds hard.
Yeah. Also, like The Ultimatum had such an like insane format to begin with, because it was like literally you showed up with your partner and then Nick Lachey was like, break up with your partner, and you did. And then Vanessa Lachey was like, go shop for a new partner, and you did within minutes of breaking up with your partner.
And with them in the same room, like mad dogging you in the corner of the room. The other thing that's wild about that is it's suggesting that if you can't find love with one of these other like 5 people, that then you must be with the right person. It's like there's a whole world of people out there.
A whole world.
My assumption when they set up the premise of the show is that they were going to take time to like date in general, because that's how that would normally work. And for it instead to be that you have to pull from this very small pool of people who also are all very freshly out of very serious breakups, many of them kind of against their will. And it's like, well, if you can't make it work with them, then it must be that you're with the right person.
Then I don't know. Also, I think the way that women contestants on these reality TV shows centered around love buy in on a completely different level than the men who are on these reality TV shows centered around love. I see it all the time on Married at First Sight. That moment that man has decided that marrying a stranger is a mistake, he feels at no point the need to fake it, the need to carry out the show, the need to do any of the things that he has quote unquote agreed by contract to do. And he just becomes absent. And you're like, where's that guy? Where's that guy that married her? But the women will like literally, because I just watched it on a season of Married at First Sight where she marries this guy before they're even on the honeymoon. He's like telling her, yeah, we had sex, but I didn't like it. I was trying to do it to see if I could get attracted to you or whatever. They get on the honeymoon and he's like, turns out my ex is having my baby. She's like, I'm your wife though. And I'm holding on to this idea that I signed up to do something and I will see this through. And I'm like, I'm that person. I will see it through because I signed up to do it.
Yeah, I think that part of the reason why there's that gender split and how seriously they buy into things, honestly, is that I think that coming out of a reality show, the response that a lot of women get, like on social media, in, you know, interviews and what, like just their experience leaving a newfound fame, especially for their specific personal identity, not for playing a character. For women, I think it's a lot of scrutiny. It's a lot of criticism. It's a lot of shaming. It's a lot of judging that they're then going to have to face. For a lot of guys, I think it's access to vagina. I think a lot of guys, as soon as you're on TV for like 10 seconds, you can now get laid easier. Yeah. And so I think when they're on a show where the premise is that they're getting set up in a relationship, whether they are interested in that person or not, whether it's going well or not, I think in the back of their head, they know on the other side of this, I'm going to have more access to more potential partners than I ever have before, if they're even remotely good looking. And like, not to victim blame ladies here, because like, hooray for everyone exploring their sexuality in whatever way speaks to them, and, you know, people, whatever. But can we stop sliding into the DMs of people who prove themselves to be monsters on TV? Like, can we stop sleeping with Jax Taylor? Can we stop sleeping with Tristan Thompson? Can we stop can we stop? Because they're showing you that they're awful, that
Right.
they are not going to be careful with you physically or emotionally or in any way. And if you're just wanting to like check it off your bucket list, I get that. But there are a lot of dicks out there.
Why are
There are a
you
lot of
coming
options.
for me? You know that Bennett from Tasha's season of The Bachelorette slid into my DMs and I allowed him to talk to me.
Okay, first of all, there's a difference between him sliding into your DMs as opposed to vice versa. But it's not even like I don't understand the impulse. Like if I was like, I was gonna say if I was in a club tomorrow, but like that literally is not a reality we live in. Right. But like if for some reason I became a completely different person and every circumstance in the world changed and I was at the club tomorrow and I ran into truly a nightmare person, if the situation was there, I would probably be like, I'm gonna shoot my shot, because there's just like a crazy like impulse in your brain to be like, well, why not? But like there's so many reasons why not. There's so many reasons.
I'm gonna go up to Ronnie and ask him if he wrote that note. Ronnie, did you write that note telling on yourself?
Ronnie didn't write the note. We know it was Snooki and JWoww.
I think Ronnie wrote it.
Girl, rewatch the episode. They tell you it's Snooki and JWoww.
Oh, all right. Well, I think it's all a lie. MTV lies all the time. So like that happened on Katie Thurston's season of The Bachelorette, where she was convinced that she was going to propose and marry, I think his name was Luke.
Oh yeah. Wait, is that Katie Thurston's? Oh yeah, that was Katie Thurston. For some reason I was mixing her up with Hannah Brown because she similarly had like
So Katie Thurston is the Bachelorette. She knows by the end of it who she's going to pick. That guy just gets sick of being on the show, which again, whatever makes you want to bow out. I don't care. But he keeps trying to tell her to go with him. And I listened to her on Good For You, Whitney Cummings podcast, where she's like, no one understands what it's like for this to actually feel like it's your responsibility, like it's your job. We're on the we haven't even done hometowns yet. People are expecting fantasy suites and that to be like a fucking ruckus. And we're already too far into the season where it's not like they're going to bring in someone else because Claire bowed out. Like, she's like, I felt like I had to see this through and there was no way to convince him to do it. So he had to go. And then I got Blake as a constellation. Yeah. I got Blake. My plan, I think Blake was like her literal plan D. And then there was like some other guy who made it to the finale. And I was like, I don't even know your name, sir. It's like, I don't even know why you're here.
Her season was super controversial and people had like very mixed feelings because a lot of people felt sympathetic for him, where they were like, you know, that we all know how hard it would be to be a contestant on that show. And he's got serious feelings for her. And like, of course he wants to like run away with her. But I found it really crappy because we all understand the fundamental premise of the show. And he kind of turned it on her as if she didn't choose to leave with him, that she was, you know, betraying him, and that she was, you know, cheating on him, that she cared about these other men more, that she wasn't there for the right reasons, basically. And
it was like some Luke P energy from Hannah Brown's season, where like anytime Hannah had fun with someone else, Luke P was like, I thought we were dating. And it's like, no, sir, you're on The Bachelorette.
Yeah. Like, no one made you come on this show. And if you want to just be in a monogamous relationship, go anywhere else. This is the show that is built on that not being how the process works.
What bothered me about that was he wasn't even open to having the conversation about why she felt like she had to stay, because I think she was in a place where she would have wheeled and dealed with him. Like, we need to finish this out. Let's talk about what's going to make it comfortable for us to finish it out or whatever. But he just got so mad that she wouldn't immediately go, you're right, I will run away with you. And I think it's a privilege point with men. Men never have to feel like they really have to do the thing. They always have an escape hatch to not doing what they don't want to do. Whereas women are like, I can't let ABC down. And what would Chris say? I don't know. I'm the person running the show. And you just like have all of these feelings of the responsibility that you have to all these other people. And men are like, I'm responsible to my dick and my dick alone. And my dick be tired of this.
Well, personally, I think that it was a facade. I think that what happened is that he did not want to marry her. I think he got that far into it. I think, because no one actually knows when they show up. They literally haven't met this person when they commit to going on this journey with them. So like, I think he showed up and maybe the chemistry wasn't quite right. Maybe he had gone on just for like the promotional opportunities and already liked someone else somewhere else. I don't know, whatever the reason. I think he wasn't that into it. And he got that far along and could see that she was going to pick him and didn't want to have to turn her down and become the bad guy. And I think he figured out, if I set it up this way, I get to be the victim. Yeah. I'm making it so that she has to dump me instead of me having to dump her, which is a classic move. Lots of people do the trick you into dumping me.
I've been tricked into dumping people. And then they get real surprised when I just endure it. Like I'm like,
Well, Katie could not endure it for contractual reasons.
All right. We are coming up on the hour.
What? I need to talk for 6 more hours.
I mean, I
don't know that anyone to listen to me talk for 6 more hours.
I completely abandoned my outline for this which has happened the last 2 episodes that I have recorded, where I was like, me and this person can just chat, and I kind of look at it and pick out clear like common words within the thread, and I was like, we should talk about how they treat female contestants. But what do you think is the biggest thing we've learned about our society or about ourselves through the reality TV shows that we refuse to give up on?
About us loving the shows?
Or anything, watching them, having them be a part of our society.
I just think that it's a dark answer, but not surprisingly, because it's a dark topic. But I think that the biggest thing that I just keep coming back to is that most people are just like fundamentally very selfish. That if you look at a lot of these shows, that you're just watching people, watch The Bachelor and look at people play with one another's emotions in order to get more screen time. While at the same time, producers are manipulating those people and their potential real life marriages. They are messing with these big, scary issues because they want to, do well at their job as a producer. And the show is cranking it out to the American public, despite knowing the impact that it has on people's, view of their own bodies or understanding of their own relationships. And people continue to watch the shows because it feels good, even though we know it's oftentimes supporting not so great things. I'm not someone who thinks that reality TV is inherently evil. I think that it's fun. I love it. I enjoy it. There is silver lining, but I think that it does hold up a pretty bleak mirror sometimes. Yeah.
Well, so I think what I've learned from reality TV and really like thinking about it while I'm consuming it, because we've had plenty of time to think about it, is that we as a society have made love a business and a commodity that we know that we can make money off of. So if you think about wedding culture, there's a lot of money to be had and exchanged when planning a wedding. If you think about the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise, the reason I stopped watching it is because it's really hard to watch privileged people get to like eat fake food when so many people are unemployed and struggling. It wasn't as hard on The Ultimatum because they had cheaper production value. And I think that is very easy to take something that is supposed to be so pure, like loving someone and being like, this is going to be a good business deal for me. And I think each one of us knows that we can have love and affection for sale and make that benefit just us.
I will say that's a very interesting point, and I think that you're right. I will say I don't think that's new, especially when it comes to specifically marriage. Marriage has always been a financial transaction. We can trace back to dowries and the entire concept of a woman being property that's bartering deals between men. So I think that it's not new, the idea that marriage can be a financial and capitalistic principle, but it is interesting because to get the audience emotionally invested, to your point, they can't just make it be about the literal marriage. It's not like whether you like him or not, you must marry him if he wins. It's about they want the emotional component. They want people crying or being in love or being giddy or whatever it is. And that gets a lot darker.
Well, and then what I've learned about myself and what my growth opportunity needs to be is that I love to be swept up in a spectacle, and I always have. But then you do have opinions and thoughts and whatever that form around the spectacle that you're watching. And sometimes I do have to then gather up outside sources. For example, I'm watching The Girl from Plainville on Hulu. This is what I knew about that case. A boy died and a girl texted him right before he died. I created this whole narrative that everyone got like real out of hand because they thought that she should have been able to stop him. And I was like, that's a lot to put on a 15-year-old girl or whatever. Why is she going to jail? And then I'm watching the dramatized version of it on Hulu, and I'm like, oh, that's why, because she was orchestrating a lot of things. And I went in fully prepared to be pissed at everyone but her. And then I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that case is a whirlwind because it's an example of everyone involved was making bad choices.
Yeah.
Like I understand the people who are sympathetic to her because, not to talk ill of someone who is no longer here, but he was not always the best person in that dynamic for her mental health. And she clearly was not the best person in that dynamic for his mental health. It's like, not to enter into this because even if we had 6 hours, there is not time, but the Depp Heard trial that everyone's losing their mind about, I've heard so much about how this is proving that he's a good guy and she's the bad guy. And I'm like, babes, what this is proving is that these are two people who are fundamentally terrible for each other. Whether or not they're terrible people, they should not have ever been allowed within 100 feet of each other. They should not currently be in the same room as each other. There are some people that they are nothing but poison to one another. And it doesn't mean that there's a good side and a bad side. It means this whole situation is yuck.
Right.
And that's why we put them together and put a camera on it and make it a reality TV show.
Well, and I think that's a huge thing too, is now we've felt the need to turn everything into a reality TV show.
It's talking about people being toxic for each other is making me realize that we have to do a follow-up at some point when people will tolerate me continuing to babble about this, or maybe just off mic, you and I need to talk, because we've gotten all this way into a conversation about toxic relationships and reality TV, and not once have we said the words Scott Disick. And we have got to talk about Scott Disick someday. And Tristan
It's
Thompson.
because, so here's the thing, I barely watched the Kardashians. It was only something that I watched in college because E was one of the good channels that we had on shitty college cable. So, and I was too busy watching Charmed on syndicated TBS.
Also excellent viewing. Well, I won't do a deep dive, but I will say he's one of the most interesting figures in reality TV because he is simultaneously incredibly sympathetic and incredibly unsympathetic. He is the kind of the viewer's voice on that show, where there'll be scenes where it's these gorgeous women, faces beat with the most fancy makeup, the nails, the outfits, eating $1 million salads and having the craziest rich person conversations. And he'll walk in the room and just be like, you guys are fucking weird. Like, he'll say something that's like exactly what you're thinking and is funny and is accurate. And you're like, he's the everyman. And then 10 seconds later, he's like stuffing dollar bills in like a waiter's mouth and like cheating on Courtney. And you're like, oh, I don't like you.
It's Nick Viall on the Bachelor franchise. I never realized when we turned the tide on Nick Viall actually being a villain, when I'm like, I thought we didn't like this guy and now he gets to come to everything.
And it's for Scott Disick kind of reasons, which is that he's smart and he's articulate and he's funny. And he is kind of a nasty guy.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know him personally, who knows, but at the same time, in the context of such a fabricated world of people of cognitive dissonance, people saying one thing and meaning another and having all these agendas, having someone who just walks in the room and is like, that's bullshit, funny joke, is incredibly endearing.
What are you hoping for the collective energy going forward while they're consuming reality TV?
Oh my goodness. I guess that I'm hoping that you are able to take the fun parts of reality TV drama and incorporate them into your existence. Like the ridiculous fashion, or the like close friendship bonds, or the wild adventures. Like take those and incorporate them into your world, and then leave all of the bad stuff on the door. Like that can stay over there. No, thank you.
No, thank you. I hope for myself, since I am now a person who sometimes puts things out into the media, that while I am watching these reality TV shows, I'm actually paying attention, so that when I am on a hot mic and you tell me that's not how that went at all, Natalie, I'm like, what do you mean that person wasn't 19 when they made a mistake? Because honestly, and this has always been something about my brain, and it's something that I know, and it's something that I always forget to combat because of whatever is undiagnosed in my brain. My perfectionism likes to manifest itself where if I don't know the full story, I fill in the gaps that I don't know with things that I assume to be true, or can infer, or can make a connection. So it makes a lot of sense in my head. It's probably a coping mechanism from all the gaslighting that's happened to me.
Well, I also think that there's probably part of it that's like, you watch all of these hours of these people's somewhat real lives, and they do in the same way that if you obsessively listen to a podcast, they start feeling like they're your friends and that you know them and that you're part of the conversation. I feel like I know the cast of Vanderpump Rules. I know that I don't, but right. I feel like I do. And the same way that you might have some friends who you're like, love this person to death, they're adorable, they're fun, they're funny, but one thing I know about them is that they make not the best decisions, right. Or sometimes they're problematic in this, that, or whatever way. I feel like the Vanderpump people, it's like, these are my highly problematic friends that I love anyway. So when something that comes up, it's natural to want to have the impulse of being like, leave my friends alone. They right. probably didn't mean it. But like, at the end of the day, whether you meant it or not, if you're an adult person and you're making choices that could potentially endanger another adult person based off of thinking it would be like a funny response to a cheating scandal, it's just messy and not the kind of cute, funny bad. Right. It's the yucky bad.
So I would like to be more responsible in not just deciding that I know everything about this one slice of a person's life that Bravo presented me, or ABC, or because I also turned my back on Katie Thurston, and then she was on a couple of podcasts that I follow, and I was like, fuck, I'm the problem. ABC got me.
Katie?
Huh?
Why'd you turn your back on Katie?
It was the after Rose, when she became unhinged, because he was still a sympathetic person until they were out of existence again on TV. And then things
I turned on him right away,
Did
baby.
You?
I turned on him right away, but
I remember texting my friend who watches The Bachelor, and I remember texting him like, I'm just so confused and I don't know how I feel yet. I'm just wildly confused. And sometimes I can't sometimes I'm really good at recognizing when someone else is getting gaslit and manipulated right in front of me, because I'm like, oh, I remember how that felt. And then sometimes, because being manipulated is something that's happened so often in my life, I completely miss it when someone else is going through it.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think we have to remember with all of it that at the end of the day, a lot of them are fundamentally flawed, but they're all people. We are all right. Just people, and we are messy little train wrecks who are gonna mess up, and we deserve a right to dig our way back out of that hole, but only if we legitimately make the changes necessary.
Yes.
And not just write a book about how it was sad.
I hope that the day that I am canceled, I can then come onto my platform and be like, I realized that I did that when I was 19 because I was a moron, but here are the things that I've tried to do to prove to you all that I'm not a moron.
Oh, but
And
you
those
won't
things.
be canceled for what you do at 19. You'll be canceled for what I make you say on an episode where we're having a conversation.
Right. I feel like this is what's going to get me canceled because
Yes.
I completely misread the Vanderpump Rules.
People are going to be like, she loves Stassi. She is a racist monster. And
I'm
then
going to
you're
be like, no, I just misread it.
this literally just happened on another podcast that I listened to, L is for Losers, which is a great podcast, another plug. They were talking specifically about Stassi's wedding, and they were kind of saying the same thing where they were like, oh, we kind of miss her. She wasn't that bad. And their next episode, they were like, people wrote in about just how bad she is. And we didn't know.
Right.
She's very bad. Thank you.
As always, tolerators, please realize that podcasting is both exciting and humbling. Annie, you've plugged a bunch of podcasts. Plug where people can find you.
You can find me listening to all those podcasts and this one. But you can find, if you like art, this had nothing to do with art, but if you like art, that's most of what I do. I'm Annie Makes Art on TikTok and YouTube, and I'm AK Sieg, which is AKSIEG on Instagram.
Yep. And Annie, I love having you here and in my life and always. And tolerators, there was a commercial at the beginning of this for the Patreon. And don't forget, you can follow us, share episodes, post about episodes, and do all of this free shit that might make it to where I'm making enough money that canceling me is worth it.
We gotta get you those cancel bucks.
Where are my cancel dollars? And thank you, Annie, for humbling me and for making me aware of something before I was bigger. And then I can be like, oh, I don't condone that. I just condone forgiveness.
I condone forgiveness too.
I condone forgiveness. And I just get so tired.
Yeah, that's fair, boo. We're all tired.
So remember, tolerators, you have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including ABC and Bravo manipulating you into trying to form an idea or definition of love, compassion, empathy, or jealousy, fiery, burning rage. You get to make your own thoughts about all of those feelings, and smiles are reserved for joy. They're only for joy.